Gather round now, settle in on the porch swing, and let me tell you a story that the wind still whispers through the pines on cold nights. It starts with Elara, a woman living way out where the paved road turns to dirt and then just turns to memory. She was alone in a little cabin that seemed held together by moss and stubbornness. It was Christmas Eve, the fifth one since her husband, Thomas, didn't come back from the logging camp. The grief hadn't gotten smaller, it just got heavier, like wearing a coat soaked in winter rain. The air outside was biting, the kind of cold that sneaks through the keyhole and settles in your bones. Elara didn't have much left. The woodpile was low, the pantry was mostly shadows, and her heart felt about empty. But she had a tradition, one her mama taught her. You always burn a candle on Christmas Eve to guide the wandering spirits home. The problem was, Elara was down to her very last scrap of wax. It wasn't even a proper candle anymore. It was a stub, maybe an inch high, sitting in a chipped blue saucer on the windowsill facing the deep woods. It was red, lumpy, and looked about as tired as she felt. By all rights, that little nub shouldn't last through a single hymn, let alone the whole long, frozen night. Elara wrapped her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders and struck a match. The sulfur smell bit her nose. She touched the flame to the old blackened wick. It sputtered, hesitated like it didn't want the job, and then caught with a weak, yellow glow. "Do your best, little thing," she whispered to it. Outside, the wind picked up, howling like something hungry trying to get in. Snow began to fall, thick and heavy, blotting out the world beyond the glass. Miles away, deep in that churning white darkness, Caleb was in trouble. He was a soldier, done with the fighting but unable to shake the noise of it from his head. He'd been hitchhiking south, trying to get back to a home that felt more like a dream than a memory now. The blizzard had caught him unaware on a shortcut through the state forest. His boots were soaked, his army jacket was too thin, and the cold was starting to make his thoughts fuzzy. Every tree looked the same in the swirling snow, just jagged black teeth against the gray sky. He stumbled over a hidden root and fell hard into a drift. Felt so easy to just stay there. The snow was soft, and the terrible shivering that racked his body was starting to fade. Caleb forced himself to stand up in the snow. A voice in the back of his head, maybe his drill sergeant's, yelled at him to keep moving or die. He pushed forward, legs feeling like heavy logs that didn't belong to him. The wind screamed in his ears, drowning out his own crunching footsteps. He was completely turned around, no idea which way was north or south or toward safety. Then, through a gap in the thick pine branches, he saw something. It was just a pinprick in the crushing darkness. A tiny, steady white light way off in the distance. It didn't flicker like a fire or sweep like a car headlight. It just existed. It was the only thing in the whole frozen landscape that wasn't moving. He didn't know what it was, but his frozen feet started moving toward it without him even telling them to. It was a lifeline thrown across a dark ocean. Elara sat in her rocking chair by the stove watching the candle. It was midnight now. That 1-inch stub should have been gone hours ago. Instead, the wax seemed to be bubbling up from nowhere, feeding that impossible white flame. The light from it was filling the whole room now, pushing back the gloom in the corners. It was bright enough that she didn't need the kerosene lamp. As she stared at the flame, a strange feeling washed over her. It wasn't sadness for Thomas this time. It was a pull in her chest, a deep anxiety that wasn't hers. She felt a phantom coldness biting at her fingertips, even though her hands were warm near the stove. She felt lost, terrified, and desperate. These weren't her feelings. It was like the candle was a radio, picking up a distress signal from somewhere out in the storm and beaming it right into her heart. The closer Caleb got to the light, the harder the storm tried to stop him. The snow turned into ice pellets that stung his face like needles. The wind gusted so hard it knocked him sideways into tree trunks. The cold was deep inside him now, frosting his lungs with every breath. His mind started playing tricks. The shadows between the trees seemed to move, taking the shapes of things he'd seen in the war. Broken walls, muddy trenches, things best forgotten. He wanted to lie down and let the darkness take him. But every time he started to give up, that white light would pulse brighter, piercing through his confusion. It felt personal. It felt like someone was holding a lantern up just for him, saying, "Not yet, soldier. Keep walking." He focused everything he had left on that. Caleb fell again, and this time he didn't think he could get up. His legs just wouldn't listen. He crawled on his hands and knees, dragging himself through the deep snow. The light was closer now. He could see it was coming from a window. He could make out the square outline of a small cabin against the snow. But it seemed miles away to his exhausted body. He was so tired. The snow felt warm now, which he knew was the final lie the cold told you before you froze to death. He stopped crawling and laid his cheek against the ice. The white light seemed to dim, flickering as if it was about to go out. A wave of despair hit him so hard it felt like a physical blow. He had come so close only to fail right at the doorstep of safety. Inside, the candle almost died. The tall white flame suddenly shrank down to a tiny blue spark, barely hanging onto the wick. Elara gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. The sudden drop in light made the room feel instantly colder, darker. The connection in her chest snapped, leaving a hollow emptiness. "No," she said out loud. "Don't you dare go out now." She didn't know why, but she knew that flame was fighting a battle. She leaned close to it, shielding it with her cupped hands, pouring all her hope and stubbornness into that tiny blue spark. "Burn," she commanded it. "You burn for him, whoever he is. Don't leave him in the dark." It was a prayer and an order all mixed together. Maybe it was her breath, or maybe it was something else entirely, but the spark caught hold again. It flared back up, not gradually, but in an instant explosion of white light that was brighter than before. It was blinding. Outside in the snow, Caleb saw the window flare up like a sudden sunrise. The intense flash jolted him out of his stupor. The shock of it sent a jolt of adrenaline through his frozen veins. He groaned, forced his arms to work, and pushed his upper body off the ground. He focused his blurry eyes on that square of light. He dragged himself forward another foot, then another. He could see the rough logs of the cabin wall now. He just needed to reach the door. Elara was trembling. The candle was burning. She kicked the door shut, cutting off the roar of the wind. The sudden silence in the room was jarring. He lay on the rag rug, barely breathing, his eyes closed. Elara fell to her knees beside him. She tore at the frozen zipper of his jacket, trying to get the icy, wet layers off him. She touched his face. It was like touching the stone of a tomb. She needed heat, fast. She grabbed the quilt from her bed and wrapped it around him. She ran to the stove and shoved the last few pieces of wood inside, opening the damper wide to get the fire roaring. She dragged his heavy body closer to the stove's warmth, chafing his rigid hands between hers, trying to rub life back into them. For a long time, he didn't move. Elara just kept rubbing his hands, whispering gently to him, "You're safe now, honey. You're safe. Just breathe for me." She looked over at the window. The candle was still burning with that intense white light, watching over them like a sentinel. It seemed to be holding the space for them, keeping the shadows of death at bay. Slowly, painfully, the color began to creep back into his face. His shallow breathing deepened, hitching into a racking cough as his lungs started to work again. His eyelids fluttered, and he groaned, a sound